Joining me today, I have author Karen Stiller. Karen, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you very much, Sylvia.
So, I would love to know what inspired your latest book called Holiness Here.
Yes, that is a great question. I'm a writer, and I don't think this is unusual, but it is important to me and worth mentioning that I'm a writer who starts with questions and not answers. So I was in church one Sunday, and one of the priests, I'm an Anglican, prayed a prayer that went like this: Give us grace, God, to lead a holy life. And I immediately was just thinking, what does that mean for me, who don't feel very holy a lot of the time, and for the people sitting with me in the pew. And so that was the question I set out to explore, and that started me on the quest toward this book.
I think that that's a fantastic question. I think it's so important, especially considering in the New Testament, Jesus so often asked questions rather than just gave answers when he was the answer. So that is brilliant. I love that. Talking about holiness here, how does this book allow readers to draw their own conclusions?
Oh, wow. You do ask good questions. You should work in radio. Um, I, uh, I, it's really important to me. And again, in my writing philosophy is ponder, don't preach, explore, don't explain. So I think that it's super important for me as a reader, even. I don't always want to be told what to do or told what to think, even though there's definitely a place for those kinds of books, of course. But that's not the way I write. And so, through story, through scripture, through pondering, through contemplation, I think the reader will be able, I hope this is true, be able to think about how am I already leading a holy life? And how could I even try a little bit more? Because the other thing that became pretty clear to me in my reading and, looking at scripture and just thinking is that we are actually supposed to put a little bit of effort in. And so, that can be hard work, but that's often the growth point. And I give some examples of that in the book.
I got to say, I'm intrigued because it's always felt to me daunting when I hear in scripture, you should lead a holy life as I've led
Hmm.
a holy life. And it's like, isn't that impossible? But I love that your book explores this more and makes me want to pick it up as well. Our current culture often says, you're fine as you are. What
Hmm.
are your thoughts on this?
That was a biggie for me. And even, well, like when I did my first book, which is The Minister's Wife, which is a spiritual memoir about kind of about life in the church, but looking at different topics. My husband, who was an Anglican minister, said to me, like, don't go on and on about how broken and messy you are. And so I we leaned into that in conversation and explored that. And that has stuck with me that we are very, very comfortable with our own brokenness, which is an excellent starting point for growth and change. But our faith allows us to change. It gives us the privilege and the opportunity of change and growth, and to sort of turn our back on that thinking, that's too hard for me, or yeah, I'm a big hot mess. Like we love to say that, and believe me, I am the messiest of the messy. But we have an invitation, a warm invitation, to follow Jesus into wholeness, into healing, into loving our neighbors. So much of our holiness is lived out relationally. So it's actually not that mysterious. I think we know instinctively how we need to love other people and how we need to allow ourselves to be loved by God and then live out of that. And so, you know, yes, this is not about perfection ever, ever, ever. This is about the journey. This is about relationship, but it is also about, yeah, trying. So,
Absolutely. I love that, especially when I think about, we've got these 10 commandments, then they explode into hundreds, and they ask, which is the most important? And Jesus brings it right down to the two that you just said: love the Lord your God and love your neighbor.
yeah.
And that's beautiful. It's such a great reminder for us. What do you hope in the end readers take from holiness here?
I hope that they would be a little more comfortable using the word, uh, even in their own head, to think about themselves that way, and to think about their neighbors that way. And that holiness is not an impossibility. God has told us we are holy. It's through Him and through His grace alone, and I'm very clear about that in the book. But that is a new reality for us. And when we think of ourselves as holy, and I know how weird that sounds, I talk about how weird that is in the book. I encourage readers, say, I am holy out loud in a room, preferably an empty room, and see how that feels. And it feels really weird. And who am I to say that? I shouldn't be saying that. But when we are able to think of ourselves in a certain way, sometimes it allows us to act that way a little bit, more naturally or a little more intentionally. And I would love for people to just think about that. And holiness has a public relations problem. People don't want that word associated with them sometimes, or people who aren't followers of Christ yet, or think the church is awful or weird, they would think holy people are bad people even. And so we need to, you know, again, I come down to the phrase, try a little harder, which I don't want anyone to think I'm not about the grace. I'm all about the grace. That is the starting point of everything.
Yeah, that's so beautiful. For anyone interested in purchasing Holiness Here or just following you along, Karen, how can they do that?
Well, any bookstore should be able to order Holiness Here. And I think it is super important to support, local bookstores. So always that's a great bet. Of course, it's available online on Amazon and all the other regular places. And if people want to, find out more or engage in conversation, I really believe that books are conversation pieces, and that writers who have the privilege of publishing a book and writing a book are engaging in a conversation. So one of my favorite things is hearing back from a reader about, something they think about after reading something, or just, sharing something about themselves. So all that to say, you can find me at KarenStiller.com, and I'm also on Substack, but all these roads lead to each other, so it's pretty easy.
Fantastic. Well, Karen, you are such a delight to talk to. I hope to speak with you again, and we'll let everybody know where they can get Holiness Here and find out more about you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Sylvia.